Welcome to the Hope After Child Loss podcast, where we endeavor to offer stories of hope to grieving parents and siblings so that they might rediscover a life filled with meaning, purpose, and hope. We invite you to come and join us. Hey guys, I'm your host Greg Buffkin, and we are so glad you joined us for today's episode. Today, y'all, my guest is Elizabeth Abaray. And Elizabeth is going to be sharing her story of her sweet baby daughter, Delia Grace, and the journey that she and her family have been on for the last few years. So, Elizabeth, welcome to our podcast today. It's so good to have you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, listen, before we dive into your story, why don't you just take a couple of minutes and tell everybody a little bit more about you and or your family, if you'd like?
Sure. My name is Elizabeth Abaray, and I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm originally from Indiana, and my husband and I have 6 children. Michael, who just turned 13, Isaac, who is 12. No, he's not. He's 11.
Hard to keep up, isn't it?
I know. Liam just turned 10. Delia Grace is in heaven, and she would be 7. Violet is 6, and Adam is 4. And our 7th child was miscarried, and our kids named the baby Moonlight.
Oh, wow. You have to be one busy young woman.
Yeah, pretty busy, pretty good. It's a good way to live.
Yeah. Well, listen, why don't you just start anywhere you would like, Elizabeth? Go back as far as you would like to, and just tell us a little bit about your journey that included the birth of Delia, right? Is that how you pronounce it?
Delia.
I apologize.
Oh, that's okay.
And just tell us what the journey has been like.
Okay. So, Delia Grace was our first daughter, and even when I was pregnant for the first time and we chose names, I knew I wanted my daughter's name to be Delia Grace. My grandmother, my father's mom, her name was Edna Delia, and Grace was just like my favorite word that there is. So I always knew it was going to be Delia Grace. It wasn't until our 4th pregnancy that I was pregnant with Delia. And the pregnancy was hard. It was the first time I had issue with my placenta tearing, which happened at 14 weeks. So I was bleeding for 26 weeks of the pregnancy. And there was just a lot of things that I prayed for her. It was just scary, and there was a lot of health, I guess, scary things for me. But when she was born, she was a big fat baby. She was 9 pounds, 8 ounces.
That's a healthy baby.
Yep. She was absolutely beautiful. She was just covered in rolls and, just a chunky, sweet baby. She smelled like cookies. When she was born, she had something called Coombs positive, which I had never heard of. It is when your blood types mix, and our blood types weren't the same. And so she had like jaundice symptoms and had to be under lights and get a treatment for that. And so, she was in the hospital like a little bit longer. And then after that, we thought she was okay. They didn't tell us anything was wrong with her or anything. So, we just took her home and loved her lots, and she was with me 24 hours a day, just always connected with me. She was a really good baby. She did have like a gunky eye sometimes, like yellow stuff in her eyes and cold symptoms. She seemed to be more comfortable if I was holding her upright. And at night, she would sometimes get like chest congestion, which we would treat. And then I ended up taking her to the doctor because I thought, she had a cold or something. And he said, yeah, she has a cold. There's nothing that you can do because she is too little and you don't really give medicine for a cold. We just thought she had a cold. And then it was maybe just a couple days after her 8-week birthday, I took her to Mass for the first time because the doctor usually wants us to wait for 8 weeks before we take her around people. And I remember being like so happy and so proud to like go up for communion with my 4 little babies.
Yeah.
Because I think they were 5, 3, 2, and then she was a newborn. And I just felt like I was doing a really good job, and I was so happy. It was the happiest time of my life. That's something that, like, I guess I overanalyze over the years that, like, was I too happy? Was I too proud? Was I feeling like this was heaven on earth because this is not supposed to be heaven? And I think it's just part of my over analyzing personality. After she died, I just was always thinking about like everything I did during her life, everything I did during my pregnancy, everything I did before she was even considered, like what led to her dying. So we went to Mass, and then afterwards we went to meet my husband for lunch in a restaurant because he was working that day. And shortly after we sat down at the table, I was nursing her, and I looked down, and I saw blood.
Oh, no.
And I immediately picked her up and started screaming for my husband because he was away from the table, like getting pickles or something for the kids. And she was almost like vomiting blood. There was all this blood coming out of her mouth and nose. And there was a lot of doctors just happened to be eating in that restaurant. We didn't know them. And they came to like help and put her on a table and started doing CPR. But I kind of, I just sort of went into a tunnel, I guess you could say. And everything sort of turned dark around me. And I remember I fell to my knees and I was just screaming and praying to God, asking, begging for him to help her. And I guess everything just kind of went dark from there. She had some type of, cardiopulmonary event. After we were in the hospital, she was diagnosed, like they did testing and said that she had coronavirus, which we had never heard of at that time.
And this was what year, Elizabeth?
This was 2016, January 17th, 2016.
And they said it was a coronavirus.
She had coronavirus, but they could not determine if that is what caused this. So I had to do a lot of research after through like the CDC and contacting different forensic pathologists and
right.
like not knowing what caused this, and then like different, I guess, like misdiagnosis really complicated my grief. Like I really couldn't even begin to heal from losing her when we didn't know for sure what happened to her, which also made it like really scary with our other kids. Like, could something be wrong with them? Because in the hospital, they also found that like something was wrong with her heart also that we also didn't know about. So it was just very, very overwhelming. And I remember just feeling like in this dark tunnel where I didn't really understand what was going on. I didn't really understand what like the doctors were saying. I didn't know that she was going to die. It was like everybody else knew she was going to die except for me.
Oh, gosh.
Because nobody like would say those words.
Yeah.
And even my husband, who's a physician, I don't think he really understood a lot of it because like he wasn't a doctor. He was
a
their
dad.
father. Yeah. And so much of the stuff, like he was making suggestions and asking if they could do stuff, and they weren't doing any of it. And that was really frustrating too, because I just felt like they weren't trying to make her better. They were just, the way I felt was they were just waiting for us to say, you can take her off of life support now.
Good gracious.
And, so she died on January 24th. Just everything changed, and it's hard because I have felt like my husband and I were really faithful to God and really, really good parents and loved our children so much.
Yeah.
So it just was hard for me to understand, like, why is this happening to us? Like there's no way that you could test us that would make us less faithful. And I guess I talked to another mom whose daughter had died of cancer, and she said, you can't really say, like, why me? Because why not me? Like, children die in all different circumstances, all different family dynamics. Like, none of us are immune from our child dying. It's just nobody really talks about it because it's too painful.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so very true. You're right. No one's immune to it. I think because we've been there as well. I think it's just that as parents, the thought of losing our child is such a foreign concept, and it's one that is really hard, I think, for parents to allow their minds to even gravitate to, because
Right.
it's just so painful to even consider the possibility. But then when it happens, I mean, you're right. Why not us? I mean, why should it be somebody else? But that's just not the way that we think.
Yeah.
And you were in a state of shock. Where you said everything kind of went black, and you're trying to gravitate. I mean, you're trying to navigate your way through the sudden shock that you find yourself in. So a lot of things just don't make any sense in those moments, do they?
No. And I guess I would say, like, even after we got home from the hospital, like after she had died, it's like my brain and my body were so overwhelmed, and my mind would just, like, never rest, never sleep. Like, it was just always filled with, like, all these thoughts and questions. And when I say overwhelming, like an overwhelming degree where it's physically painful. Like, all of my eyebrows and my eyelashes fell out, my fingernails, my toenails. I had open sores, like hundreds of open sores all over my body for months. Like, the my body's physical reaction, I remember even while we were in the hospital, I kept asking the nurse, am I dying? Am I dying? Because what was happening to my body was so tremendous and so overwhelming that it literally just felt like I was dying. Like, at any moment, like a hard wind could hit me and I would just fall to dust. Like, I don't know how I functioned, at least for a year, if not for 2 years. I think I just focused on my other kids and what I had to do for them. But I can remember many times for a long time, if we were in a restaurant or something, and restaurants were very triggering to me, or any public places where there was a whole lot of people, because I did have diagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder and did EMDR therapy for that, and I still go to, like, psychotherapy to this day because I just need it to help me through things. But
Sure.
I can remember being different places, especially restaurants, and strangers or maybe even people we knew would try to talk to me, but all I could hear, like, I couldn't process. So my brain was just like, meh, meh, meh. And my children or my husband or someone else with me would have to answer for me. I couldn't put together thoughts. And before that, I'm actually a licensed attorney. Like, I had been very articulate, and I couldn't answer the simplest question. And that started really at her graveside. The priest was trying to ask me if we were going to stay to bury her. Whatever he was saying, I couldn't understand at all. And I just remember saying, I don't know. And then I couldn't stop saying, I don't know. Like, I broke down into tears and was crying and screaming, and I think people, like, surrounded me and took me away, but it was still just like this crazy out of body experience. Like, even walking to and from her grave, my memory of that was that I had to walk up this big hill, and it was extremely difficult to just get to her graveside. And now when we go there to decorate her grave and things, it's not a big hill. It's not a long distance. It's not any of those things that on that day it was. it just took a long while for my brain to kind of start putting itself together. Like I feel like my brain broke, like the neurons in it didn't connect anymore. Everything
Elizabeth,
was very confusing.
yeah, I've had other parents that were guests to describe, what we heard a lot during the COVID season, brain fog.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you brought this up. I know that it's painful to talk about, but I'm really glad that you brought it up because it's an aspect of grief. I think especially when we suffer grief that's so traumatic, like in the loss of a child, people don't really appreciate the physical impact that that level of grief has on a parent.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just emotional. It's a physical, it's mental, and it's emotional, and it's spiritual. Every kind of impact that you can think of happens, and it all happens kind of at one time.
Right.
And you just shared that you were also diagnosed with PTSD, which is another common symptom of parents who have been through traumatic loss.
Mm-hmm.
So it's real what seems to be very easy everyday activities for the average person and for you prior to losing your daughter. All of a sudden, there was nothing normal, nothing routine at all about those things anymore, was there?
No. And that's one of the reasons so I have a foundation now. It's called Forever Our Angel Foundation. And we try to help families and children and also educate medical providers. And one of the things that I hear all the time from people is they think that they're losing their mind or they describe their grief symptoms. And it's because they've never experienced it before. And because people don't really talk about it, they think they're the only one going through this. And they're like, either not doing it right or they're losing their mind or they're dying. And just to have somebody else say, no, that is normal. And then when I hear something that just from my research is not normal, then I can tell them you need to go and get some help for that. Because generally when someone's child dies, I tell them you need to find a good grief counselor right away. And it needs to be a grief counselor. It needs to be somebody that has experience with this. Because I've gone to someone who was not well trained. I went to him for 3 months and it didn't help me. But when I was with the person who knew what they were doing, it did help me. So I do think you need to give whatever counselor you try, a few sessions. One time is not going to help. You have to go for a while to start being helped. But I do think people should do research, ask other friends who may have gone through something similar or other traumas that can refer you to someone. There's also a website called betterhelp.com, or even, if someone comes to me or I can refer them or check out things in their area, find people who have experienced something similar who can help you find the right person to talk to and start talking to them right away. Your mental health is important to you. It's important to your children. It's important to your family. And you're not going to know what is normal grief and what is not until you get a chance to talk to someone. But even with normal grief, I just don't think it's any type of walk that you need to be doing alone.
That is such good advice and counsel from somebody who's living it. And I completely agree with you, Elizabeth. The takeaway from all of that you just said is please don't try to do this alone.
No.
It's just too hard. And there is help available. But please talk about it to someone that you can trust. And a counselor, a good counselor, can be invaluable in your healing process.
And I think so for me, probably in the first year after, the people that helped me the most were people I did not know, other bereaved parents who kind of were referred to me by friends. They were the easiest people for me to talk to because they were not judging me and they were telling me the real stuff.
They got it.
Right. It's easy for your family and your friends to say, you're going to be okay. well, what do they know?
Yeah.
They never lived this. So how do
Right.
they know I'm going to be okay? I didn't really trust anyone that loved me because I didn't know if they were telling me the truth or not, or if they were just trying to make me feel better.
Sure.
So it was better for me to talk to people that didn't know me, didn't, love me in that way, didn't have a relationship with me. And I thought that was better for me. But even now, so I'm 7 years, she's been in heaven for 7 years. And
Yeah.
I always find myself feeling like kind of like judged, or people thinking that I'm weird. But like we were saying earlier, they don't understand how hard normal things are. They don't get how, like, my lens is different when I'm in any situation, because I'm automatically seeing all the things that I could be afraid of. Like all the things in any situation that could hurt my child or another child. The world is so much scarier now, and ignorance was bliss. Before I entered this community of people who had children die, I didn't know all these different ways that kids die all the time. So I'll be in
No.
different situations and see things and be like, oh my gosh, my friend's kid died doing that same thing. It's just, or when somebody says, oh, my kid's been complaining of chest pain, or they've been fainting when running, and everyone else is like, oh, I think they're probably fine. I'm like, no, that's not fine. That's not normal. Like, you need to trust your instinct. Even if a doctor's telling you that's normal, it's not. Like,
Right.
you need to ask someone else. Because I know multiple people whose children have died from heart, like, issues in their heart that were never diagnosed, or they had doctors telling them that they were fine and they weren't. And they
Yeah.
just didn't look. They would go one time and not look at their whole history. Doctors don't know everything. Like, God bless doctors, and I'm so glad we have them, but nobody knows
Absolutely.
everything. And sometimes, you just have to trust your mama heart and go, I really don't think it's normal for my kid to be fainting every time they go for a run, or even 2 times,
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. I interviewed a couple just recently, and they went through a similar situation with their, I think, 9-month-old son. He died because there was some medical protocol that was kind of antiquated. And as a result, he needlessly died because there were things that were not looked at that should have been looked at.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, this is one of those things where God brings something good out of such a traumatic event. And that was, in their case, the medical protocol in this hospital was changed.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And I think
yeah.
it's good that we can find purpose in pain. It's good that we can find ways to make it through, if you will.
Right.
But it doesn't change the pain of the loss.
No.
Any good that I've been able to do, or my family's been able to do for other bereaved families, I would give back in a heartbeat to have my daughter here. I would say someone else can do all those things.
Yeah.
I want my kids to live a normal life. My kids suffer, and they don't really have like a community of people and other children to talk to, because when they try to talk about their loss, other kids start talking about their dead dog, because other kids can't relate to that. And then when they do meet someone who's lost someone that they love, my kids are the ones that are able to comfort them because they get it more. But it's very lonely for children, and you have to pay attention to your children, and you have to listen to them and respond to their cues. Someone was telling me that they had taken maybe their 3-year-old daughter to the pediatrician about 6 months after their older daughter had died. And the pediatrician said, I think they're okay. And the mom said, I think maybe she's depressed. Like, she's not acting normal. And the doctor said, well, why would she be depressed? She's 3 years old. And she said, well, her sister died. And this woman said the doctor told her, oh, I thought she would be over that by now. Like, what do you mean over that by now? There's no over that. There's through it.
Right.
You have to listen to them. And the 3-year-old can have depression. And one of the things I've done is I didn't feel like there was a good resource for kids where it could, little kids like 5 and under could be able to talk about and share their feelings in a way that they can relate to. So I wrote a children's book called Hugs for You, Kisses for You. And you can also get a little doll with it that can be used for a therapy doll or just, something to cuddle with it. And it talks about how a young child can stay connected to someone that they're separated from by, death or other circumstances. Could be a sibling, grandparent, a pet. And it's just a way that kids can start to talk about how they feel by relating to the story. And they don't even need to read. My daughter first looked at this when she was maybe 3 or 4, and she could relate to the pictures.
Yeah.
And I just laid it with other books, and she started flipping through it, and she was telling me what was happening in the story from the pictures.
What an awesome resource that sounds like.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get that out, especially into children's hospitals, so that it can be used to help siblings whose siblings have died. So that's what I'm really pushing for, is to get these into children's hospitals. I have been able to donate them to 4 different hospitals so far, but people can go on our website, foreverangel.com, and they can make a donation, and they can either say what hospital they want books to go to, or they can let us choose, and we can send them anywhere in the country. And
I'm sorry, what's the reception been like generally?
Well, I mean, the hospitals are really happy to have the books. Their child life specialists will send me cards and things saying how, thankful they are for the books. We just need more people to, make donations so that we can send them out. We have like several hundred books to send. It's just a matter of, getting them out to places.
Right. Well, a lot of what you just said speaks to I think the breakdown in our culture and the narrative surrounding child loss and sibling loss. And part of the evidence of that is just in what you shared, some of the responses, some of the things that were said to children, sometimes to us as grieving parents, from people who have never walked there. And there's this misconception that at some point you should be over it. But as you said a moment ago, and I want to circle back to that and emphasize it, there is no getting over the death of a child. There is only getting through it on an everyday basis. And there is no normalcy in your life again. It changes everything. So what used to be normal is no longer normal. There needs to be a change in the narrative. We need to be able to talk about it. And the general public, I hope one day, will better understand the impact of what you've been through and what so many other families have been through. So thank you for what you're doing to bring this to the forefront.
Yeah, I think honestly, it helps me. It's part of my coping too, finding purpose in the pain.
Sure.
Trying to do something with it and something for her. I never feel like, as much as I do for her, I never feel like it's enough because she's not here. Like, I'm doing things with my other kids and serving my other kids every day. Her loss is always present. Like, I miss her in every single thing that we do every day. And I just want to do more for her. And I guess it's a way that I feel like I can do something for her, and so that she has an impact on this world for as long as I can make sure that she can.
Yeah. What I'm hearing you say is that you don't want her to be forgotten. So you include her in everything that you do every day in some way, shape, or form, mentally and emotionally. There's never a moment that we don't think about our child that's not with us any longer. And so you do things that you can do, that you have the ability to do, to honor the memory of our child, to honor their life. We want people to understand that our child lived.
Yeah.
And yes, we lost our child. There was the death, but we want the focus to be on our child's life and the impact that they had when they were here. But I love what you're doing to make sure that as you move forward, you have the ability for your child, even all these years later, to have an impact on other people, other parents, other siblings.
Well, yeah, because she's always my child, and just like everybody whose kids are living, they're doing things for and with their child. This is my child, and sometimes it can be frustrating and hurtful to me when people don't count her. I feel like
Right.
when an adult child or an older child dies, people aren't trying to tell them how many kids they have. Like, they don't stop counting them in the number of kids. But I have literally had people try to tell me that I have 5 children.
Mm.
And I respect all life, and I respect the sanctity of life and the dignity of human life. And all life has meaning and all life has purpose, no matter how short. You know, God has this huge, big plan for all of us. And he had a big plan for Delia Grace. And he has a big plan for me and for all of us. And so we can't say because she lived for 9 weeks and 3 days that she doesn't have a bigger imprint or as big of an imprint or impact as you and I, because she does. And if not for her life, there are so many things that we have done that wouldn't have been done, and so many people we have helped. And even I really feel that some of my friends even were compelled to have more children when they hadn't really considered it before because of the loss of her. You know, like, there are people who exist in our world because my daughter Violet was actually born. So Delia had her cardiac arrest on January 17th, 2016, and Violet was born on January 17th, 2017. And I really feel like God was like listening to our prayers and trying to make that day better. And I remember my little boys they thought that I was going to give birth to both of them again.
Oh.
And I kept telling them, no, I think there's just one baby in there. And they would say, but God can do anything. And even though he didn't have me give birth to both of their sisters again, God can do anything.
Yes.
And,
amen.
You know, as much as I trusted in God before, I trust him in a different way now. And instead of praying for God to fix my problems or heal my pain, I pray for him to show me his will. And I pray that every day my words and my actions can be in furtherance of his will. And I try to fill my time and make it very purposeful and very intentional to fill the days with good. Like, just fill it up. Like, I hear all the time people say they don't have time for this, they don't have time for that. Well, it's just not a priority, right? When you make something a priority, you'll find time for it, because all the day is blocks of time. Our days are blocks of time. So,
and we all have the exact same number of hours.
And tomorrow's not promised. So if something's important to you, or you want it to be important to you, then you'll figure out a block of time that you can add to it. I think that ministry is so important and it's so valuable. And there's so many ways that we can serve other people. And that when we are serving other people, it makes us a better person too. And it draws us closer to God. And in today's society, I see so much of like me. And I want to put out into the universe, you. I want to serve you. And I want to do it because God wants you to know how much he loves you. And God wants you to know you're not alone. And God wants you to know that you get as many chances as it takes. And that his forgiveness is forever.
Yeah.
And I've been able to, maybe not completely, because I do feel like there's a part of every mother who's had a child die that is always going to find some fault in themselves. Is always going to blame themselves, no matter how they died, because they're going to analyze everything that they ever did and analyze how could I have prevented this, right? But in the end, it wasn't our decision, it was God's decision. I guess I just want to like make sure that other moms know that they're good moms and that it's not fair that your child died and it's never going to be okay. But we can find ways to get through it together, and that we can find ways to be better humans because of it, to be more empathetic and more kind and give grace upon grace and look at things in this different perspective where it's like certain things that a lot of people might think are like a big deal, they're not that big a deal. Like my kids have a perspective other kids don't have because they know what something really bad is. So I would, teach them, save your tears for real pain. Save your tears for death or the house burned down or your leg broke or, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Don't cry over a bee. It'll be okay.
Yeah.
That's not a big deal. And I don't know, I pray every day, so many times a day, and just hope that more people will be able to take their pain and do something good with it and put out, be there for other people and make it about other people. Like,
absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting, Jesus said he didn't come here to be served, but to serve. And that's part of what you're talking about, is making yourself available, even in your pain and even in your tragedy, to reach out and help somebody else and try to lessen their pain a little bit more and to offer them hope.
And comfort.
And comfort. Yeah, because you're living through it. You're living proof that you can survive and you can go on to eventually find meaning and purpose in life again that you really don't think is possible in those early days.
And especially, if anybody's listening whose child has died recently or, in the last year or two, I can tell you it took me so long to not be angry at words like peace.
Yeah.
When people would say, like, I'm praying for your peace, I would say, that's not real. Peace is something that somebody made up who never felt like this. Right. But now, 7 years later, I can go, I feel more peaceful. It's never going to be okay to me that my daughter died, but I do feel more peaceful and I do trust God's plan. There were so many words that people said to me that made me so angry. When people would say, be strong. I don't want to be strong and I don't have to be strong. And that's not helpful. It's not helpful for you to be strong. It's helpful for you to feel everything that you need to feel, because if you don't, you're not going to process your grief in a healthy way. We don't have to be strong. There was a lot of words that just were like triggers to me that I would inside, not outside, but inside, I would want to yell, that's a lie. That's not real, because I just couldn't see how I could ever feel better. And I didn't want to, like, I needed to hurt. And I didn't have fun. And, life just wasn't happy for a really long time. But I slowly started to wake up and I slowly started to let myself laugh and let myself feel happy and, try not to feel guilty about it. And then got to a place where I'm like, I don't think Delia wants me to be sad all the time. I think she wants me to enjoy her siblings. And
sure she would.
She's in it too. Like, she's doing the things with us. Even riding a roller coaster at Disney, it means something different now because she's doing it too. I try to take her with me everywhere and show her the things that she missed.
Of course you do.
And I also want to tell people whose child has just died, please know that, like, biologically, your child is always with you. When you grow a human inside of you, their DNA is a part of you forever. So, like, scientifically, your baby is with you forever. And they're not alone in heaven. There's no time in heaven. When they get to heaven, they're meeting Jesus, and then you are standing right there with them. Because in heaven, we want for nothing. So
absolutely,
you are together with them all the time. They're with you and you're with them. So please don't ever think that either of you are ever alone, because that scared me too. Like, how is a baby going to be without their mommy? And she's not. she's not without her mom, and I'm not without her. And it is hard, and I'm never going to say that it's not hard, but I want every mom and every dad who's living with their child in another place to know there's more of us out there, and we want to help you get through these really hard days and these really hard moments. And when you're in a really, really hard moment and you don't think you can get through it, look at what you've already been through and say, I got through that. I can get through this. And just keep going. Don't give up. You are loved.
That is so good and so well said from a mom's heart. And what I hear from you very clearly is that you have been able to come from that very dark place to where you are now, and to be able to share something that's so painful from such a dark beginning because of your relationship with God.
Absolutely. I would not have survived if not for my relationship with Jesus Christ, without knowing
Amen.
that she is perfectly fine and loved and happy, and that I am too. And it's hard when your kids live in two different places. You want to be with all of them, and we will be, and it will be the most joyous reunion, and that's what we get to live for now.
That's the future hope that we get to hang on to.
Yes, sir.
Elizabeth, tell us again about the name of your ministry and how people can get in touch with you, or how they can plug into the resources that you have available.
So it's called Forever Our Angel Foundation. Our website is foreverOurAngel.com, and you can go on there and you can request books for yourself or for someone else that you know that has had miscarriage, stillbirth, or a living child that has died. And we have resources for parents and for children that we'll send them like a packet. And then also on the website, there's different links to other organizations that can help. Like, for instance, there's an organization called Just Enduring, and you can link up with other parents who can be kind of like comforters or mentors to you through the process. So they will help find someone, usually in the United States, who has maybe had a child die in a similar circumstance to you, that can help you through it. So they link parents together. There's also a link to Respite Retreat, which is a retreat that happens a few times a year at different locations in the country. It was started by Nancy Guthrie and her husband. She's the author of Holding On to Hope and several other books. But it's a great retreat, weekend retreat for bereaved parents. My husband and I attended one in Nashville, and it really was life-changing. It's a different experience to spend that much time with all other parents who get you. Yeah. It's almost like you can take off your cloak of only a bereaved parent can understand what I'm talking about. You kind of walk around in the world covering yourself, like you're afraid of everything, if that makes sense, and you can't talk about what's really on your heart. But then you walk into this retreat, and within 24 hours, you're sharing about yourself, your family, your child that died so openly, and you just feel like a normal person for 48 hours. Yeah. And it's just like you can breathe. So I highly recommend that. There's also links to the Dougie Center, which helps teens who are grieving. I think there's several resources on there. But our website, again, is foreverourangel.com. You can also purchase books. My book, Hugs for You, Kisses for You, for yourself, or make donations to send them to hospitals. There's all kinds of ways to help yourself and others through our website. And then I'm on all the social media, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and it's Forever Our Angel.
Man, those are such great resources. I wish that more grieving parents were aware of all of these resources, because there are more than If you're listening today, I know that we found ourselves in a place almost 8 years ago where we felt like there were no resources, but there are a lot of good ones out there. It's just a matter of finding them and getting plugged in. So thank you for sharing that. And Elizabeth, thank you so very much for allowing God to use your grief, to use your pain to help other grieving parents and siblings now, for that matter, in their grief.
Thank you. And thanks for having me. I really enjoyed talking with you.
I did as well. It's been an honor to have you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Elizabeth. You as well. If you find our podcast meaningful, we invite you to follow us so that you can automatically receive the latest episodes. Also, we'd like to invite you to contact us and talk with us about sharing your story on a future episode, because every story is important and matters to God. Please reach out via email at hope@emptychairendeavor.com. That's hope@emptychairendeavor.com. And as always, thank you so much for listening.